Hello, and thank you everyone for joining us today at Festive Tech Calendar 2021. This is Abdelmajid and speaking, and I will be your presenter at today's session, Azure Governance, and more specifically around Azure Custom Policies. Right, so before we start, I would like to introduce myself a bit. In very few words, I'm a cloud advocate. I love geeking around cloud native, DevOps, DevSecOps, automation tools, and governance, which will be the topic for today's session. So let's jump right to the agenda. First of all, as you all noticed by now, the title is around Azure Custom Policies. That is small but significant part of the governance model. So we will start by giving a brief overview about governance in Azure. What is it? How is it done? Then we'll do some background checks around the different benchmarks and standards that we use today in order to say that this is compliant and this is not compliant, especially when you really don't do business around the cloud, but you only use the cloud to do your business. Makes sense. Then we'll jump right to the policy part. We go check some important aspects, patterns, use cases, scenarios for your strategies. And finally, we'll finish with a demonstration showing you how you can find all the necessary inputs for your custom policy journey. Okay. Actually, Azure Governance is just one aspect of the large area of Azure management. Governance provides mechanisms to maintain control over your apps and services inside Azure. Depending on your strategies you already have in an on-premise environment or in your newly created cloud environment, depending on your priorities. One aspect of management or other aspects of management could cover other areas like starting by migration scenarios, security updates, patching management, infrastructure as a code, network as a code, backup, disaster recovery, disaster resiliency, etc., which will not be covered in a direct manner in this session. But to keep in mind that all those areas should be considered for any piece of cake you are planning to serve in cloud. It's kind of like a life cycle that should be maintained, not a single Azure service completely fills the requirements for a particular management area. Instead, each is realized by several services working together. This is very important to keep in mind. On the other hand, Azure Policy allows you to create, assign, and manage policy definitions to enforce rules, to make conditions for your resources. This feature keeps those resources compliant with your corporate standards, other international standards, government standards, etc., etc. In the next slide, we will be talking about those standards, how are they defined, and also who is responsible for giving us those standards. Right. So Azure security benchmarks, as you are all probably aware of, the cloud moves really fast. Developers move faster and attackers are always on the move also. Besides, most of the apps and services are shipped insecure. So the world needs security researchers, cybersecurity SMEs, experts to share their vision, their expertise, their exploits. Such an organization needs to provide baseline security and guidelines to vulnerabilities and make the world a safer place. Actually, CIS is like the Bible of security best practices for applications and software. Besides CIS or Center of Security, benchmarks actually have a very huge community behind that shares valuable feedbacks and recommendations. A couple months ago, I used to volunteer with them, which everyone, by the way, can also do this. there were very interesting conversations around some security matters in Azure, for example, key vault key rotations. We've been talking a lot about this feature, and finally, fortunately, Microsoft has quickly added it. So yeah, it's very important to stay up to date with the community. Microsoft also has the spirit. So they has found that using security benchmarks can help you quickly secure cloud deployments, can help their clients to move really faster to the cloud. So they have created what we call today Azure Security Benchmark. They are in like the third version today, I think. It includes a bunch of security recommendations for every managed service in Azure, basically. And it's frequently used to address many common use cases and many common challenges. There are many partners or Microsoft clients that are new to Azure and are looking to to make their journey to Azure very safely and very securely. So they are looking for security best practices for their landing zones, for example, or for the for their new deployments, for example. Other scenarios where existing clients want to improve their security posture of existing Azure deployments to prioritize top risks and mitigations. Anyway, there are many challenges, and Microsoft has tackled all those challenges with the Azure Security Benchmark, and with the CIS benchmark is available for anyone there outside to use it. You can actually contribute in an open source project if anyone is interested, available as I've shown you on this screen. It's for the community, by the community. So it's very interesting to, as I said, to stay up to date regarding new things, new updates. We've talked a lot about security so far, governance, but not about policy or custom policies. The number of built-in policies or the built-in policies before, they are the native policies that are offered by Microsoft to their clients. They are free to use. Everybody can use them. Yeah, they are there. They are in the they are by default in your subscription. You just need to activate them and to assign them. This is the built-in policies. And the number of built-in policies and initiatives is vast, very vast, and keeps on growing. You will find probably most use case scenarios have been already covered by Microsoft product teams, which could be possible. However, it is still common to come against requirements from some partners, some clients, which I've personally faced, that are not yet covered by the built-in policies. So in this case, this is where you need to build your own custom policy if you can, of course, because it's not always possible to build your custom policy. We'll see why. But before, let's just take an overview of the policy itself. How is it? How this policy is working? There are basically 3 blocks that you should know about. The policy definition. It's a JSON file that describes the resource, the rules you want to check on your resources, if they are compliant against or not. For example, if you want to restrict the list of locations where users can deploy resources, for example. There is the initiative concept. As you can see, it's a bunch or a collection of policies. preferably it should be a common policies with common goal, or you know, common scope. This is very important because you want to have initiatives, a bunch of policies basically that are dedicated for you know, compute services, or bunch of policies that are dedicated for storage services, or bunch of policies that are dedicated for you know, some business teams, finance teams, HR teams, etc., etc. And there is the assignment. So once you have your policies are defined, here they could be built in as well as custom policies. They are merged, or they are grouped into what we call initiative. And then you have to assign them, means you need to activate them and to execute them against some scope. The scope can be either a resource group, an Azure resource group, or your Azure subscription. It could also be your management resource group, etc., etc. But you certainly need to define a scope. And of course, if you define it to be your subscription, you can exclude some resource groups. The same goes for resource group. You can exclude some services. So yeah, it depends really on where you want to execute. It's very flexible. So you just need to specify where you want to execute those policies. One of the cool things I personally find about JSON structures is the possibility to cover a lot of patterns by design. Means the Azure policy schema JSON file, we could say, contains several ways or patterns in order to develop many, or to tackle many challenges and many use case scenarios. A policy definition can contain several conditional statements. You might need each statement to be true, or only need some of them to be true. To support this needs, the language has logical, what we call logical operators, not all of and any of. They are optional and can be nested to create complex scenarios. We'll see this in detail in the next slides, don't worry. There is also the field and alias operators that evaluate the specified property or alias to a provided value for a given condition. We'll check this on this slide. The field operator actually evaluates the specified property against some given condition. Means you can combine different patterns with different, you know, you can use many design patterns for your policies, as many as you can, in order to build your policy to tackle your challenge. There are some complex scenarios as well as some very simple scenarios. Okay, in the other hand, in the other column, as you can see here, you have what we call effects. So basically you have 7 possibilities or 7 outcomes to your policies that you will probably define. So you have the append effect, the audit effect, audit if not exist, deny, deploy if not exist, disabled, modify. I think each one of them by its name, it's very obvious, it's very clear. But just to give you a bit of definition, the append operator or the append effect adds the defined set of fields to the request. Audit generates a warning event in activity log, but doesn't fail the request, means it's just auditing, it has no effects. Audit if not exists generates a warning event in activity log, and if a related resource does not exist. It's like the complementary effect of the audit effect in order to be 100% sure that all the services, all your coverage is compliant. You have the deny effect, where you could generate an event in the activity log and fails the request, means you can potentially deny some deployment to be done if you are sure you want to do this. Means I can use a policy to deny the deployment of new virtual machines in the Canada Central region, for example. As I know, they have some issues with quotas provided by Microsoft, for example, in this region. This is just an example. So yeah, there are many use case scenarios where you can define effects depending on your needs. The deploy if not exists, actually, it's very interesting. We'll see this in an example. It's where you say that if this some resource, for example, you deployed a virtual machine, someone deployed a virtual machine, but you've discovered that always this many people, everyone, whenever they deploy a new virtual machine, they forget to install some extensions inside of it. For example, inside of this virtual machine, some very important extensions. You can force the installation of your extensions by using a deploy if not exist policy. This is very nice to use, actually. Disabled and modify, I think it's, yeah, disabled, you can disable an effect, you can disable, sorry, a policy, and modify, you can modify a resource. Yeah, for the logical operators, as I've said, you can have like for the in the first screen we have the policy role block. We have three. We have the if condition plus, in just below it we have the logical operator, which is all of. So I need to make sure that in order this policy role to be valid, I need the three of them. So it's all of, means three of them are necessary. Otherwise, the effect will not be executed. The second screenshot, actually, it's the same. We have a double condition, but with the logical operator not. So this is the second logical operator we can use. The third screenshot is like a combination of three logical operators: all of, any of, and the not, and not equals. The failed operator, it's used 3 times within the logical operator all of in this one. The first use evaluates the location property with the not in condition to the list of allowed location parameters. Not in works as expected an array, and the parameter is an array. If the location is created or updated isn't in the approved list, this element evaluates to true. The second use also evaluates the location property, but uses the not equals condition to see if the resource is global. The last one uses or evaluates the type property and uses the not equals condition to validate the resource type isn't B2C directories. If it isn't, this element evaluates to true. If all the 3 conditions statements in the all of logical operator evaluate to true, the resource creation or maybe the update is blocked by Azure policy. Because when you assign a policy or an initiative, it's not always auditing or creating or disabling, or sometimes you can update your resources by using some policy, which is the case in this one. A policy definition also, which is very important to mention, can be made dynamic to reduce the number of policy definitions that are needed by using parameters. This is what we call parameterized effect. The parameter is defined during policy assignment. parameter have a set of predefined properties that describe the parameter and how it's used. In this case, as you can see, we have parameterized the default, the allowed values, actually the effect type, effective value. So we've given it the default value to be audit, but we've mentioned that we could probably use maybe by other teams or by myself in the future, the audit, deny, and disable effects also. The deploy, if not exists effect, makes it possible to deploy an Azure Resource Manager templates, ARM templates, when creating or updating a resource that is not compliant. In this example, we are trying to tell the Azure ARM template if ever you catch up some network service in this region or in this location in this resource group, if you don't have some network watcher in this resource group with this location, please deploy it for me. It's one of the default built-in policies that Microsoft has developed. So let's now move to the part where you want to bring your own policies to the game. There are some prerequisites. First of all, you have to identify your business requirements. You have actually 5 prerequisites. They are not very difficult to own or to start with, but it's very important to keep them in order and to be clear in your mind. You know, it's very important because if you have them, it will be facilitating a lot for making this journey easy to you and to your company and to your team. First of all, identify your business requirements. Means my team or my foundation team, for example, wants to build a list of all the possible features developed under some Azure managed database, let's say Cosmos DB, for example. I want to cover all the features within my Cosmos DB in order to be compliant with the PCI DSS or with the, let's say, CIS. Okay. Yeah, so sometimes you have some features that are on preview or some features that are still new, and Microsoft product team responsible for covering the policies has not yet developed them. So yeah, sometimes it's important to start by identifying business requirements by using the least privilege principle, or for example, if you want to secure apps deployed in some Kubernetes managed. Secondly, you have to map each requirement to an Azure resource property, either by using the CLI to figure out which property you need to use for each service or for each feature. Let's say for this example, for the less privileged principle, you have figured out that, yeah, it's Azure roles. It's the Azure roles property we should look for. For Kubernetes, you said to yourself, yeah, it's obvious. It's the Kubernetes resource property. Then you need to map the property to an alias. Before creating a custom policy, it's important to understand which aliases to use. This will be used as fields in the policy role. We then need to determine the logic one to create. So we'll see in the next slide how you can find your aliases, but this is very important step. We need to map the property to the right alias, okay? For example, we want to use a less privileged principle in a policy, then you need to define some role, some airbag role. So you need to write on this airbag role. Same goes for Kubernetes service. You need to, for example, force the usage of private cluster within Kubernetes service. Just use the managed cluster Alias inside the Microsoft Data Container service. Then you'll need to determine which effect to use. Sometimes you just need to audit and that's it. And sometimes you need to deny, sometimes you need to modify and disable. Depends really on what effect you want to do, what is your business requirement. Then finally, you just need to compose the policy definition, create it, assign it, and boom, that's it. You're good to go. Several of the aliases that are available have a version that appears as normal and name, and another that has the asterisk attached to it. But before that, this is just as I've seen this one. So means like there are many other properties that you could extract just from this alias. Okay, but the default one is, for example, the ID. The list of aliases is always growing. This is important to keep in mind. So you will need some very efficient way to figure out what are the aliases for some services. Are they available yet or not? To find what aliases are currently supported by Azure Policy, you can find them either by using the Azure Policy extension Visio Studio Code, by exporting templates. By the way, this is the recommended way to do this by Microsoft. So Microsoft recommends to you guys to use the Visual Studio Code extension for Azure Policy in order to check if there are any new policies, new aliases, sorry. You can also use, you can also check this by exporting templates. This works most of the time when there is some preview services that you want to catch up in a policy. So you just need to export the template of this service that is in preview, and you can have all the aliases that are available for this service. You can jumpstart with GitHub quick start templates that are already available in public. We'll see in the demonstration how you can do this using the Azure Resource Explorer, but definitely one of the best ways to do this also is by going with the command line interface, either CLI or either PowerShell. Now let's jump to the demonstration. Okay. Okay, so yeah. Here we are in the portal.azure.com, okay. We will go to search for the policy service just to show you guys all the possibilities we have. On the definition parts, we have all the built-in definitions that are defined, made available by Microsoft itself. So as you can see here in the type, they are all built-in policies, okay? So all built-in policies. And you have you can filter by category, means each category have maybe between 10 to 15 available policies. Yeah, so what I wanted to show you guys is, first of all, how can you find some the aliases that we've been talking about. As I've said, you can do this in many possible ways. One of the best ways you can do this, for me, is by going with the command line interface. The command to do this, I'm going to show it to you guys. It's just the get iz policy alias with the namespace match, where you can just type in, the service or a part of the name of the service that you want to check on your aliases. For example, if you want the compute related aliases, you can just type in compute and it will give you all the possible aliases. Okay, this is cool. This is cool. I like it. This is the command I use the most. You can also use the easy provider show. This gives you the list of the resource provider properties. Sorry, not this one. The list of the Azure resource properties that you can use for your custom policies. So it's just like this: easy provider show with dash namespace Microsoft.storage or Microsoft.web, Microsoft.compute, whatever you want to check in. You can add some, to make it more visible, and you can query actually on your command line and make it more readable, human readable. So yeah, as you can see here, you have all the aliases by resource property, okay, for this storage namespace. One of the other things that I usually do to check on the resource provider and resource properties aliases is by going to resource.azure.com. Okay, this is very important to have. This is a very important to keep in your favorites, guys. So basically, you go on the providers and expand the list, then just check on, for example, the advisor, Microsoft property advisor. Then here you have all the available aliases with some details and descriptions for each alias. This is very important and this is very helpful sometimes. So yeah, but the thing with the Azure Resource Explorer is that first of all, it's in preview, and second, it's not sometimes it's not updated. Like when there is some new services out there and you want to quickly check on its aliases and or whatever, check the resource provider, sometimes it's not up to date very quickly. You need to wait some hours, some days. So yeah, let's go back to the policy blade. So we can, the best practice, the best way to do this is by using the VS Code, pushing your code to some GitHub repository or Azure DevOps repository, and then from there deploy to Azure using some CI/CD pipeline. It's very clean, very good way to do this. But for my case, I will just go with this very easy, simple way to do this. So I will just create it from the portal. I will call it, for example, in my case, I'd like to, let's say, okay, sorry for this. Let's say that I want to let's say that I want to deploy something like this, actually. To check in HTTPS if enabled on its storage account. One of the best practices when you are deploying your custom policies is always use some nomenclature, some very good naming convention, because once you getting like 20 new custom policies you'd like to have, you would definitely want to have naming convention, like some keywords to start with each time you deploy some new custom policy. So yeah, you can put in also some description. This is policy that will be that will be auditing storage, create that all storage accounts can will be well with the HTTPS only mod enabled. Yeah, it could be something like this. For the category, if you'd like to add some new category, you can, or in my case, I will just add it to the storage category somewhere. It's related to storage account. So I will put it in this category, and then I need to grab my policy. As we are short in time, maybe I will just copy paste a policy that I have wrote and just grab it to put it in this in here, just to check how this is going to work actually. Okay, so for example, I have this policy. This is my policy. It's actually just to check if the network access determines if the network access, determines if the the HTTPS is enabled by default on your policy. On your storage account, sorry. So yeah, I just need to find my, where I put my code. Okay, here it is. Okay. So now that we have copy paste, I will just show you very quickly the code. So yeah, you have the property section where we define the display name. Display name is the display for property of your policy description plus mod. Mod actually, when it's all in all, mod means you don't have you don't want your policy to be scoped to some some tag value name or some resource group, for example. When it's on all mode, means it's available for all services. The parameters effect type. So yeah, I have parameterized my effect type. It could be deny and disabled. It could be deny and deploy, not deploy, if not exists, but disable or modify, for example. That's it. What else? I have defined in my policy role the logical operator all of. I've used the field design pattern. I've used the storage account basically, and the storage account / support HTTPS traffic only Alias. This is the Alias I found. I found from the the command line interface. And I used also the not equals logical operators true. So when all my conditions are true, then the effect should be deny me the deployment. If I save this, policy definition is created. I can assign it then. I can choose which scope I would like to assign my policy. I would say all the 5 resource groups I have currently. Review and create. I check on the parameter. We don't have any parameters to add because it does not have parameters, as I have already choose the default value for my effect to be deny. Okay, so now that I have assigned my policy, we can jump right to the assignment section. As you can see, I can see now that my policy has been assigned. It will take probably around 13 minutes in order to check on the compliance state against all the resources I currently have in my resource group. So yeah, at after 30 minutes, I think it will show me that maybe, probably, I don't know, I have some storage accounts that are not well secured, are with the HTTPS only not configured, not enabled. So when it will give me this type of resource dashboard compliance, I can actually do some remediation. There is another, I can add the policy effect modify to my policy and specify what to do if ever I have this HTTPS only not activated on some storage accounts, because it will be denied for the newly created. So I can use some modified policy, or I can do it using a new policy where I will be saying deploy if not exists to all my storage accounts, the HTTPS only feature to be enabled. So yeah, there are many patterns to choose in between. So that's it. I hope that my demonstration was clear to you guys. Thank you very much for watching me at Festive Tech Calendar. Don't forget to donate to Girls Who Code. We really want you guys to help us on this initiative. Thank you, anyone. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.